Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Get to Know You with Jim Cartwright. Jim, how are you doing?
Doing great. Excited to be here. Excited to, I feel like it's been a little bit since I've been like on a talking stream instead of a playing stream.
I don't think you and I have been on a talking stream together. That's
Oh
how
my
long
gosh,
it's
is
been.
that true?
It's got to be close, because I think we've only been
Yikes.
streaming a couple times together, which is interesting.
Huh.
Have to get you on here more often.
Absolutely.
But thank you all for joining us. This is going to be a sort of new series that we want to introduce, where you get to meet some of the faces behind the people that bring some of your favorite games to the tabletop. So designers, members of FFG staff. We just want to make sure that you all get to know who is making these games and know that we're also just as excited about these things as you all are. And so this is something we're going to start kicking off now, but we have a very special reason for why we're doing this, is that we brought Jim on to make a quick little announcement for all of you sitting at home interested in what's going on at Fantasy Flight Games. The studio is proud to present Jim as FFG's new head of studio.
Yes. Yes, it's an absolute honor to be a part of the legacy that is FFG. It's been, FFG's been a huge part of my life since well before I got here, and to kind of be charged with its future is a huge honor. I want to be very clear too, because I think this is really, really important. Our former head of studio, Chris Gerber, is still part of the studio. Has made decisions for his own reasons to kind of be part of the studio in a different way. But nonetheless, I am so grateful for his mentorship, for his leadership. All the things that he took the studio through. I mean, Chris was our head of studio during the pandemic, ushered in the era of digital integration in the way that we operate and work, which was in itself an entirely massive project. Chris is responsible for greenlighting Star Wars Unlimited and so many of the great things that you see coming out from the studio today. So a huge thank you to Chris for all of his efforts. I'm excited because, and I know he is going to be, the studio is kind of structured in like play types. So like board games, living card games, trading card games, and Chris is going to be leading all of our living card games. He has a lot of history there and is extremely excited to lead the LCG team and produce the future of our exciting products in Arkham and Marvel Champions.
Yes, it's really exciting. This is a huge moment for the studio, welcoming you in. And I know that some of our fans who have tuned in to previous live streams have met you, especially around Star Wars Unlimited, but previous live streams before that, you've been on for other game lines. But we really wanted to give you all a chance to sit down and get to meet Jim. I know obviously events and things, but this is, more, let's hear about the history of who you are as a person before entering FFG, as well as the things that you've done since you've gotten here, because you've been here for how many years now?
Just over 7 now.
Just over 7 years.
Yes.
We should have brought your 5-year art piece on here. We'll bring that another time when we'll show it off.
Yeah, that'll be a future stream.
Future stream. Now we have a good reason to get you back. But we just wanted to, let you all get to know him because it's important for you all to know who is, leading the team here at Fantasy Flight Games.
And I think a big part of it too is we really are trying to be more transparent with the community. We want to engage with all of you more. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to, respond to your feedback. This is important to us. We are, as kind of a studio and as a brand, we are fans first, and we want to make sure that we bring that experience to you. And we're not perfect. We will occasionally there'll be missteps, but at the end of the day, it's really important to us to none of this exists without you, and that to us is the most important thing for this. Awesome.
No better words could have been spoken about the ideals behind FFG at this point. So let's get into it, Jim.
Sure.
We'll save for the FFG part for later, but let's talk about a little bit about who you are before you started here. Could you give us a little rundown of, what led you to FFG and maybe some of those things that happened along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. My past career life is less important, though I did have a chance to work in hobby stores specifically for a number of years. But my kind of journey started when one career ended, another opportunity opened, and I went back to school for game design, actually. And I had one goal, and this is a video game design school, which is, all of my classmates are trying to get in with video game studios. And I was adamant that the only place I wanted to work when I got out of this was work at Fantasy Flight Games. And I did everything I could to put that into motion with, I got onto the playtesting teams. I was part of flight crew. I got to know a lot of the Fantasy Flight team of that era, and just tried to do anything and everything I could to be a part of the Fantasy Flight community, even before arriving.
Nice. All right. And so you said, being a part of all these things, but also I think you have a history of, competing as well across the board in some of the games here.
Yes, I'm a big card game player in general. Tons of board games as well. I want to be very clear. I have a lot of stuff that I enjoy from the Fantasy Flight catalog. But yes, I was a competitive card game player. Yeah. Primarily, this should come as no surprise to anybody, the Star Wars LCG was one of my very first competitive loves for Fantasy Flight. I did play Game of Thrones beforehand, love, obviously. But I think that I really, really found an opportunity to be competitive in the Star Wars LCG community.
Yeah. Yeah, you loving Star Wars, big surprise there.
Yeah.
We actually, I believe we have an article about a tournament that you, happened to do really well in on May the 4th one year.
Oh, the May the 4th, okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
I know what article that is.
We'll throw that in the chat. That's you on before your time at FFG, you were on the website already. So, coming in, you already had a name for yourself here, which is pretty cool.
Yes, it was, that was a ton of fun. It was for, I believe, the first Star Wars weekends we did here in Minnesota. It was actually my first time in Minnesota. I'd driven up with my brother to compete, and I got to meet, a lot of the design team that worked on the game and a lot of the people around it. It was, it was really cool to kind of engage with that for the first time as a player, and it really, I think, sparked my interest really in pursuing the idea of coming to Fantasy Flight in some way.
That's really cool. All right, so we got to the point of now you're ready to get it in at Fantasy Flight Games. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the positions you had, some of the things that helped you grow in your career from jumping on board here and to where you are now as FFG's head of studio?
Sure. Yeah. It has been a wild 7 years, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I came in as a designer for Mansions of Madness. I joined a team with some awesome people. It was Kara Santel-Dunk and Andrew Fisher, who were shepherding the new Horrific Journeys expansion for Mansions of Madness, and I was given the honor of kind of, I was going to be the designer for one of those three scenarios that are in that product. So I was the Stargazer Majestic scenario. For anyone who is a Mansions fan, the dirigible murder mystery kind of experience was my first real foray into professional design. And I had so much fun working on that project. I learned so much from everybody on that team, both on the Mansions team, but also our board game team, and really, kind of learned what it meant to be at Fantasy Flight and the kinds of things that we, hold dear and focus on. And so I really just spent, 2 years in the board game side learning. After Mansions, I moved into Descent Journeys to do the final digital campaign.
Oh, wow.
So Embers of Dread, if you've played that. I also worked alongside one of our very talented interns, and we built together the final physical product for Descent 2nd Edition, which was the Lost Legends pack that basically added all the extra multi-classes. It was wild because it functionally doubled the amount of potential combinations that the game had, and really kind of blew the doors open on a lot of the options. It was a wild time, and but a ton of fun because I'm a huge fan of the Descent game lines. And so from there, I actually jumped on with Nathan Hajek to be part of the initial kind of design window team for Legends of the Dark. And worked alongside him for a couple of months before I was actually pulled away into my first kind of new role at the studio, which was I had applied for the card game manager position to kind of lead and support the card game team. And so I was again, as a huge card game player, this was awesome.
Yeah.
My previous career history is very management focused, and so it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of a new experience, but it's a familiar one, and it got me exposed to a lot of the games that I'm super passionate about as well, and being able to see the inner workings of the way that the Legend of the Five Rings game was working, Keyforge, Marvel Champions in its earliest stages, and of course Arkham Horror and all of the things that we have been driving for that. It was awesome to see the pacing was so different from board games, but it really gave me a perspective of like, okay, so there's multiple ways to do all this, and I gained a lot of respect for the way that the design process is so different from game to game, and understanding how that kind of all works within our teams.
Very cool. Yeah, that is I mean, you got to see it all from that level too. And then so from card game manager, you then moved on to director of strategy.
Yes, I was the product strategy director after that, again, about probably 2 years in. And I started to, it was a new role in the studio that really focused on, what are the kind of games experiences that we want to have, and what are the opportunities we have to bring, exciting new products to our different lines, and what does that look like? Some of those things, because of how long everything takes, even some of the things that we implemented back then are actually still not fully out and running, so to speak, as a lot of these things just take time in the way that the process of development works. And so, yeah, I did product strategy director for about a year before they kind of really changed and shifted the role. I was kind of brought a new team. We had kind of a strategy team where I was brought on 3 team members to kind of also help guide and focus on those different play types of, our LCGs and our TCG and board games, and really kind of dive into what is trying to gather data, trying to listen to the community, get feedback, and see how we can implement that into the way we both make our games and support our games, talk about our games. Really started to dive into all of that. And about a year of that experience brought me to a new role within, it was kind of the role that I had up until this point as the VP of strategy, where we also folded in kind of the marketing team into the thing. So
yeah.
I got to work directly with Xander more closely, and so many others on the marketing side, and kind of understanding their perspective on how we market our games and ways in which we can tie the strategy of what we're doing inside the game lines with also the marketing and how we want to start doing that. And that kind of leads me to kind of here.
To today, this starting line for you as head of studio kind of deal.
Yes.
Amazing. That is really cool story. I saw some people in the chat talking about all the different game lines that you touched in some way and were interested in, and so it's cool seeing so many people from across the different game lines and history of FFG getting to hear about all these things that you've been a part of in some way. Maybe they don't realize that until this point. And so definitely an FFG guy through and through here.
Oh, it's to my core and soul. Again, this was the only place I wanted to be within game design. This was I will do whatever I need to do in the meantime. It was a year from when I graduated till when I got my first position, and I did whatever I could to keep the fires lit to make sure that I could keep, checking in and applying when opportunities arose. I think I was really fortunate because having the video game design portion of it meant that I was familiar with digital tools and digital implementation of gaming, design philosophy.
Yeah.
And the opening happened to be for Mansions of Madness.
Yeah.
And so it was this kind of perfect blend that gave me a little bit of an edge that helped, I think, put me there's so many, every time there's a position open for a designer, we get like 100 applications in the first hour. It's wild. And so to be kind of pulled out from that is something I think about all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, we said you're an FFG man through and through, but let's talk about one specific thing that I think puts you above, even fanboys like myself who have been huge fans of the studio for a while, is that you have this thing called the Impossible Collection, which we kind of teased out. Do you want to let people at home know what the Impossible Collection even is?
Sure. Yeah. It's my pride and joy. This is my baby. So the Impossible Collection, there's this little storytelling involved in this, and the idea of, so I'm a collector by nature. I love to collect. I love the act of collecting things. And as much as it's exciting to get new things, kind of the saddest moment in collecting for me is when it's complete, because you kind of run out of the chase and there's a little something lost. And so it came to me, I was working as the card game manager and really being exposed to so many more things about FFG's history, learning from those who've been around the studio for years about what we've done and the different games that even I didn't know about at the time. And so I decided that in order to create an experience where I could never finish the collection, I would literally have the chase forever for the rest of my life, I deemed this the Impossible Collection, which is to acquire every single thing that FFG has ever produced as a product. So not just every game, but all of the OP content, cards, playmats, everything that FFG has ever done in its history, I wanted to be able to catalog and acquire and chase. And it's been an incredible ride. I've learned so much about the way we used to operate as a studio and how we, were philosophically from the beginning, what the kind of ideas were. And it goes back even so Fantasy Flight Games started in '97, but before that, Christian had Fantasy Flight Publishing, which was actually import for some of the overseas comics and things like that would come in. And so I actually am also collecting everything that is the publishing side as well. So I have a bunch of the trade paperbacks that we produced during that time and things like that. It's been really exciting, if nothing more than, the thing that I think happened along the way is how much I just fell in love with. You could see all of the way that FFG kind of DNA seeped into everything and kind of understood a lot of how we operated and why we operated the way that we did. It's been awesome to go kind of down a history road while also getting to do the thing that I love, which is finding, exciting things that I don't have in the collection and bringing it in. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've seen you, when we're out within the cities and going to board game and card game swaps and things. I've run into you before, soon after I moved here, and you're like, oh, I'm just on the hunt for these 3 things today that I never had seen before, but hey, you never know, maybe it'll show up today. And so it's wild, the dedication that you have to it. It's not just looking online, it's going to these places, interacting with these people who have played the games and really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you get plenty of great stories out of that too. Oh
yes, very much so. I actually I don't do a whole lot of the online acquiring of things because to me there's a lot of this in-person hunting, finding something you weren't expecting, right? Instead of just typing it into the chat or into Google and finding it, searching it on any kind of used service is fine and it's great. But I love the idea of going into a store or going to a marketplace meetup or something like that to find these things, because sometimes there's things I discover that I didn't even know. I've got a giant spreadsheet that exists, and I still find things to this day where somebody has something, I go, wait, that says FFG on it. What is that? And then someone, inevitably is like, oh yeah, either they don't know, which happens occasionally, but a lot of times if it's the original owner, they're like, oh yeah, this was a thing that I picked up at I went to a Game of Thrones event, and in that event there was these 9 Wildling cards that only existed for the TCG at that time when it was the TCG before the LCG model, and you had to go to this event to be able to even get those, and it's like, whoa, okay, how much? Well, I need that.
That's incredible. So I know that you also brought a couple of items here today that are from the Impossible Collection, which have a really interesting story that I think not a lot of people probably know from the outside of FFG. So what do you have for us?
Sure, yeah. This story, I really like the story behind this actually, and it also happens to be something that is, quintessential to the history of Fantasy Flight, right?
Yeah.
So here I have essentially what are our first 2 games, and I'm gonna kind of highlight this here. So this is a first edition Twilight Imperium, which was produced in 1997. And then alongside that is a game called Golf Mania, which a lot of people don't even recognize as a Fantasy Flight game if they're thinking about it or see it on a shelf.
Yeah.
You can obviously see, there's actually the, on the side, kind of the, very, I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick this up, a very old school FFG logo.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about the way this was gifted to me by a former employee who had this and had been saving it. And with it, when he gifted it to me, there was a story behind it. And the story behind it is that in order to, these games were basically produced together at the factory, and in a very clever way with which to kind of, maximize space and shipping and everything else, Golf Mania was actually sent back to the US inside Twilight Imperium First Edition. And then when it arrived in the warehouse, we were going to unpack all of the Golf Manias and separate those out and then repack. But these 2 came together. I was gifted this as a set that have never been played or punched. I can't do it. I do have a very worn version of Twilight Imperium First Edition that I have and have played plenty of times. But for this is really a piece that I think the story behind that was really cool. And there's so many of those kinds of stories that exist of ways in which, when someone says, what's the first game FFG ever made? Everyone goes, Twilight Imperium. It's Twilight Imperium. That's what launched FFG. And that's true. But alongside of it was a tiny little game called Golf Mania that if you've never had a chance to check out, it's wild and crazy and very, very different than Twilight Imperium. So I just think it's really cool and points to kind of our roots and our history.
That's really neat. And yeah, people are pointing out those are incredibly great shape for games that are that old.
Yes, I try to take very good very good care of all the things that I have. It really is a sense of pride in my home of like kind of the growing FFG collection that has started to get a little bit big for its space, and I need to consider how to move that. But it's been awesome. It's so much fun.
That's really cool. All right, so. Now that we've gone over a lot of these things, I know we've talked about a couple of the different games, your history. Let's get to know you as a player of FFG's, games that have come out recently. Let's talk about some of the things. We'll do a little rapid fire question about, who you're playing, what different things are happening there. So let's start off with what overall is your most played FFG game? Let's do all time and then maybe like in the last year.
All time?
All time most played FFG game.
All time is going to be Star Wars Imperial Assault.
Okay.
I played that basically weekly before getting the job from its alpha days. My gaming group was in the alpha side of that.
Oh, yeah.
And played it from alpha until I got the job in 2017, which is a long time. And basically it was a weekly game that we met up every single Wednesday, played, met, the occasional times when I'm at Star Wars Celebration for fun or, out competing for something else. We might have missed a couple, but it was pretty much a weekly experience where we played that game. Yeah.
Nice. Most recent?
Most recently. This is unfair, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to say Star Wars Unlimited because obviously I've been playing a ton of Star Wars Unlimited in the last year.
And you were one of the designers on it.
Yes, and I was one of the designers on it. And then I think the other thing is I still love, and it's wild because again, it's another one of those games that I got the pleasure of working on, of Mansions of Madness, but I do love that game so much. I have such fond memories of it being, my first design and things like that. I never play my scenario though. I don't ever want to do that. So I try to do everything else. But I try to get Mansions to the table with friends as much as I can.
All right. Speaking of Mansions, let's dive into the mythos a little bit. Who's your number one investigator across games?
Oh, that's not fair. No.
Okay.
No, it can't be across game. All right, here's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
How about this?
Yeah.
Arkham Horror, the card game.
Yes.
Nathaniel Cho. I'm a Guardian player. Love Guardian. That's my go-to.
That's fair.
And then, but you can't let me not say Silas Marsh from Mansions of Madness. You can't.
That seems fair.
So, okay.
I'll let you have that one.
Just want to be clear.
All right. You have Twilight Imperium First Edition over there, so let's go in that direction. What is the longest game of TI you've ever played?
17 hours.
Oh my gosh. That beats mine by just a little bit, but not by much.
We did it as a it wasn't actually an Extra Life's playthrough, but it was we decided one day we were going to do a 24-hour gaming day, just starting for fun, and we played Twilight for most of that. There might have been a lot of banter and consuming of things that made that longer, but that's what Twilight Imperium's about.
Yeah, getting together with friends, hanging out for 17 hours straight.
And crushing
someone.
your enemies. Yes, that's the point.
Perfect. All right. Who is your most played hero in Marvel Champions?
Ooh, Captain America.
Captain America.
I
Really?
love Cap. So there's something about, there's something about the way, characters who kind of portray that protector role or I know it's not protection, but Cap as a character is one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah.
And so I just lean into Cap because it creates all of those I like what Cap represents as a Marvel character. In the same way that I like Nathaniel Cho's, I like what Nathaniel Cho brings as a character to Arkham.
Nice. All right. I know that you had a play group that was playing Descent Legends of the Dark as well.
Yeah.
So, what is your go-to hero character in that one? Who are you playing the most when you all sit down at the table?
Anyone who watching from my old gaming group knows it's Galadin, 100% Galadin all day, every day, all the time.
Yeah. Galadin's great. No. I mean, yeah, I can't argue.
I will say again, leaning into the I like tanks and video games or things like that. Bryn is a very if I wasn't playing Galadin, I would play Bryn. But that's kind of the my go-to.
Fair. All right. So you said you've been playing a lot of Star Wars Unlimited. What is the best pairing for Twin Suns? For those of you at home, Jim's going to give the perfect Twin Suns pairing, so you could take that to your next event.
All right. I want to point out, I am sure that the reason Xander is bringing this up is because we played a game of Twin Suns when we were at San Diego Comic-Con, and he brought a Krennic Kira Twin Suns deck that is absolutely busted.
Yeah.
And is not in the spirit of keeping Twin Suns casual. I just want to point that out.
It was, I was so busy thinking about if I could do it, never stopped to think if I should do it. And the answer is I shouldn't. But it was great.
But in the spirit of Twin Suns, Xander, did you win that game?
I did not. Jim and Steve Horvath managed to team up, and they actually had to work together to beat me. There was no option of one of them doing it and the other one not, because I had, I think, more units on board with shields than they had units combined. I was in very good shape.
And we don't have to talk about who actually won the game.
No.
But the important part is that did not win. Xander did not win.
Yeah, that's important. I'll take that loss there. It felt good. All right, so for Star Wars the deck building game, we know we've had a lot of internal debates about this, and I know we've had this conversation in this very room, but I want you to solve this right now for people. Is Star Wars the deck building game a board game or a card game?
It is a board game, and the reason it is a board game is because it has all card components, but the way in which it is kind of presented to players, the cadence at which content releases, all of the how we make it internally is a big part of this conversation too. Of like, it is treated like a board game, and in fact, it has pieces that are more than just cards in it. There are the cubes. There is the force tracker. Or
the force tracker.
All of those things exist in the game and are not just cards. Therefore, definitively, on this stream, it is a board game. I'm sure the chat's going to roast me now on that.
Yeah, if you disagree, please let us know so you can agree with me. I understand, though. I get it.
Yeah, really, you're taking sides here. Are you taking Xander's side or are you taking my side?
Yep.
It's fine.
Put a poll up in the chat.
Yeah, oh, gosh, here we go.
All right, we got another question here. So I know that you're a big fan of the Lord of the Rings, the card game, the LCG. And so if you were to build a deck strictly around yourself and who you are as a person, what spheres of influence would you be using for that deck?
Okay, so, I play a lot of leadership lore, but I think that with that caveat, it, I think, has to be lore, because again, I love history, I love the idea of understanding what came before, and then I think spirit, because I really I think that that's such an important quality for the gaming, if you're going to be part of the gaming community, having that just, we're here to play games. It's fun. It's showing that kind of spirit for the intent of the game and what we are trying to do. So I think it's going to be lore and spirit.
That feels good. That feels good. I mean, the lore makes complete sense with everything else we've discussed today. All right, final question that I think is really important and will say a lot about you, more than any of the other answers you've given so far.
Oh boy.
All right, you said you play some card games. When you start sleeving them up, what color sleeves are you using? We'll take out art sleeves. We'll take out all these cool other things that we use all the time. But what color sleeve if you're going matte sleeves and throwing your cards
matte
in
sleeves?
Matte sleeves. What color?
This is going to be the most boring answer ever. Black. Black sleeves. Black sleeves. You know what? Because I want to draw attention to. Actually, that's on. So it
take
depends
it back right now.
It depends on the game. It's so important. The game matters for card sleeve colors, right? If I'm building a Star Wars Unlimited deck, I have to make sure that my sleeves match at least one of the aspects on there. That's not villainy or heroism.
That's right.
Also, if I'm playing something like Lord of the Rings, I'm going to need to put, if I'm doing a mostly lore experience, that's what I want to lean or feel like, I'm going to run green. Like, you can't just, it's not a universal thing. I disagree if you think it is.
That's fair. So the first answer is black, and then if you get to ask him deeper, it matters based on game. That seems fair. All right, black sleeves all the way. We got some people agreeing with it. I disagree with all the people saying board game, but we can have that conversation at an event in the future. All right, so we got most of these questions out of the way, but I want to give you a second if there's anything that you want to say, to all of our communities out there right now that are watching, before we, round this out. As again, this is the first of a series. We'll hopefully bring you on again to have more chats in the future about FFG, but we'll also bring on other members of the studio and get to chat a little bit more with everybody and do something similar to this, where people get to come on here and argue with me about sleeve colors. But is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're referring to here, right? Of we're creating this series to kind of get to know the FFG team and who are the people behind all the games that we make, and you can kind of connect with them on that level. Is I think part of what we're trying to accomplish with increasing transparency, and we've been starting to do that over the last year or so, but we really want to kind of embrace that and really get a chance to again none of these games are made exclusively for us. This is for all of you. We want to make sure that, we are talking to you about the things you love and the things that you would love to see us do in the future and how all of that works. So I want to be very, very transparent as much as we can going forward. And I think on a kind of like a final note, I think it's really, I cannot express enough how much the FFG community means to me and means to us as a studio. And I really very much appreciate all of you. And I am extremely humbled and honored for the opportunity to lead this team.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for joining us today to chat about your Impossible collection, your journey here, and announce your new role within the studio. And thank you all at home for joining us today to get to know Jim. We really look forward to doing this again in the future.
Absolutely.
But until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.